Cincinnati is quickly becoming an international destination for a lot of talent, and with companies like GE Aerospace winning massive deals, we expect that growth to continue in the future. Today, I am joined by Feli from Germany, who has a massive YouTube channel, who moved here from Germany to talk about what was surprising, what shocked her, what she loves about Cincinnati, so that you can get a feel of what it's like to live and everything you need to know about living in Cincinnati. Feli, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, glad you're here. Why don't you tell the people out there a little bit about yourself and about your YouTube channel?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Munich, Germany, born and raised. I graduated with my undergrad there too, and then during the last semester of my undergrad is when I first came to the US for a longer period of time. It wasn't my first time in the US, I had been here as a tourist before, but during that last semester is when I wanted to do a study abroad, and I really wanted to have that American college life. And my department at my Munich University had an exchange semester set up with, or had an exchange program set up with the University of Cincinnati. And so that's what I did. That was in 2016. And I loved it. I had such a good time. I didn't really expect to love American culture and my experience here so much because I had been here in the past and I never considered living here or moving here. But then being here for a longer period of time really changed that. So after that exchange semester, I then was looking for different ways to come back here. I had to go back to Germany first, of course, because the visa situation doesn't really allow you to just stay here. But I was back in Germany for, I don't know, 9 months or so, and I was just constantly trying to find a way to come back here. And then I was able to find something, and I did an internship, and then I had to go back home again, and then I came back for a master's. And then I was lucky enough to win the green card lottery.
There you go.
Which, allowed me to just be here full time, and also in a way that I was kind of flexible with what my job was, because usually your visa is directly connected to either your employer or your university, and then you can't really do anything outside of that. But with a green card, you can be unemployed if you want to, you can be self-employed, which is what I ended up doing, and that really wouldn't have been possible otherwise.
Well, let's talk about your job a little bit. You're a professional YouTuber now, right? Yeah. Tell the people a little bit about your channel.
Sure, so I started that maybe like a year and a half after I first came here. So early 2018 is when I uploaded my first video. Hello, servus, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm so happy you're here because this is my very first video. So I just want to introduce myself and tell you guys what this channel is going to be about. It was basically just an outlet to talk about my experiences with the cultural differences between Germany and the US that I was experiencing pretty much every single day. Yeah, and then from there, I mean, it wasn't really supposed to be anything that I was trying to make money with. And for the first 2 years, every time that someone asked me if that was my end goal to, like, you know, do this full time, I always said no. Like, that's way too shallow, way too superficial. I don't want to do that.
I have my master's.
Yeah, like, you know, I could maybe see that doing that part-time and having another job part-time, but I don't think I want to do this full-time. But then in 2020, things just kind of came together, and, you know, it was different things. Like, I was in a job application process and I ended up not getting the job. It was between me and one other person. Ended up not getting it, and that was in the same week that the pandemic kind of hit, 2020.
Oh yeah.
And during that same week, YouTube featured my channel as Creator on the Rise. And so within that 1 week, I think it was like the first or second week of March, or third or something, you know, something like that. Suddenly everything was just blowing up on my YouTube channel. These like agents were reaching out to me, trying to make money with me. And so I was like, okay, I'm put in a situation where that one job didn't turn out to happen, but this other thing is like opening up and these people are trying to make money with me. So maybe I should try it myself first and actually take this as a business and try, because I hadn't really run it like that in the past. You know, I hadn't really tried to view this as a business before. So then I tried it and I was like, let's see how long it works and how long I enjoy it. And it's been 5 years now, and I'm still doing it, so.
It's kind of a surprising journey.
Yeah, kind of.
Guys, make sure you go check out her channel. It's awesome, it's fun, it's super smart. All the videos are very well researched. She puts a ton of time into them. So great content. Make sure you go over there, check out the videos, and subscribe to the channel.
Thank you.
But let's talk a little bit now about your, I guess, impressions of Cincinnati. I mean, it was over a course of time, but what were some of your first impressions, maybe that were surprising or that caught you off guard, and maybe some of the impressions that you're like, oh, I really like that?
I mean, I think what I really liked about Cincinnati, and I had been to like New York, and I had been to the West Coast and to Chicago and other bigger places before I lived in Cincinnati. I really like the size of it. I think it's not just in comparison to like New York, but even compared to Munich. Munich isn't a super big city. It's about 1.5 million people, but that's like the inner city. I know in the US you usually measure like metropolitan area, but it's like inner city of Munich is 1.5 million. But it's so densely populated that there's just not a lot of space. I mean, in Germany in general, personal space is a very rare resource. That's also why homes and everything are like a lot smaller. And being here and just having space and being in a city where it's not too overcrowded that it's always stressful, but it's kind of relaxed here. That's what I liked a lot. Like you kind of have everything that you have in a bigger city in terms of, you know, like the hospitals and medical research that's very big in Cincinnati, the universities, the bars, the culture, museums, the riverfront, which I think is so pretty, big events, but you can also have, depending on what you end up doing, if you go and you watch the sunset on the Covington side of the river, for example, I've done that several times and I was basically alone.
Right.
So you can have your crowds and you can have like the calm, like the quiet and peaceful life. And that's really what I like about the city, is that I don't miss the stressful part about living in Munich, if I'm being honest. And the like always having to plan ahead. How do you get from A to B? How long is it gonna take you? How long are you gonna be stuck in traffic? Like all of that. I mean, there's traffic here, of course, but if you don't go during rush hour on your main roads, you can just drive everywhere pretty chill, and you know there's going to be parking. I don't know, it's just relaxed.
It's very different. Very different than dense.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like that is also represented in people's mentality in a way. And I think it's a general, like a Midwest thing, or many people would say it's an American mentality thing in general, but I think Midwest, maybe Southern a little bit is playing in there as well, like Southern mentality, that people here are just kind of relaxed and chill, and I really like that.
Yeah, it's, you know, people say a lot that Cincinnati is, it's a big city in terms of metro in US. It's like 28th, 29th in terms of the metro area population, but it's got a small town feel.
Yeah.
And so kind of what you're saying there is like, you kind of know everyone, you can get around town, you can go around, you're not scrunched in, but you have these larger amenities. Not something like you're going to have in a more dense city like Munich. And you've been to other U.S. cities as well, right? You've traveled around.
Yeah.
How would you kind of compare Cincinnati compared to other U.S. cities you've been to?
I mean, I feel like it depends on what you compare it to, but I would say this is kind of like, to me, a stereotypical mid-sized American city. Yeah. Like it's kind of like a Pittsburgh or something like that. It's not, I feel like it's maybe a smaller Chicago, if anything. I wouldn't really compare it to New York. I feel like one of the big cities that I would maybe compare it to is Chicago, just a little bit. But yeah, I feel like it's just one of those very typical, like very car-centric. But again, you have some of that history, you have some of those big amenities too. Just kind of, as you said, like small town vibe, but still being a big city.
You've got the amenities. So you've mentioned a lot of them, but what are some of your other maybe favorite things that you've experienced here while in the city?
I feel like at the beginning it was a lot of the partying. I think a lot of it was always the people. Like the way that you can just meet Americans. I mean, that's for me, like speaking from a German perspective. Germans are very different in terms of making friends. Usually it's hard to crack our shell, and then once you crack the shell, you're friends for life. Here, people are just so easy to connect with, even if it's just for like one nice conversation at the bar or one nice conversation at the airport even. Like Americans just chit chat everywhere they go and connect over little things, and I love that ability to connect over little things, because Germans sometimes struggle with that. They can't really find that mutual thing, like even if it's just an artist that both people like. Americans, I've seen so many situations where I had different friends that I had made, like friends from university, friends that I had met through other friends, and I brought them all together in my student house at the time, and they were just bonding after 2 minutes, and it was just so easy to socialize. And I think that was one of the big things that I loved, and I think Cincinnati is a great city for that, because it's not as anonymous as maybe like a New York, for example. I feel like, and also like East Coast people in general are a little bit more European in that sense, that they're more like closed off. Because every time that I've been to New York, even at bars, you don't really have that as much. And people here bond over everything, like whether it's sports and, you know, Cincinnati chili or whatever you have here.
It's a weird thing to say. It gets said a lot that people are friendly here, there's community, but it's hard. I think you're doing a good job of explaining it. It's you know, versus that East Coast or maybe more European where it's a little more rigid or maybe more harder to crack that shell, like you're saying. It's easy, you know, a lot of times I hear people who are moving here, they're driving down the street and people will wave to them. And they're like, what is that?
going on?
Yeah, they're like, are they trying to rob me? Are they trying, like what, there's kind of this self-defense that goes up naturally. And I'm just like, no, it's that's just kind of a thing here. People are friendly. Yeah. Maybe they don't have the depth that you're saying, like it's, because we were talking about this before recording, you mentioned your best friends are still, your friends in Germany. And so like, it might be tougher to crack that initial, but then you go really deep. Yeah. Have you found that here on the flip side of that, where people, maybe you're friendly on the surface, but maybe is it more shallow?
See, I feel like that is a very prevalent stereotype that a lot of Germans have about Americans in general. And I think that's something that was kind of disproven to me during that longer period of time, during those first 5 months that I lived here. I feel like in a way, yes, it is more shallow, but that doesn't mean the people are shallow. I think it's just the culture that's just part of the culture that you stay more shallow for a longer period of time. That doesn't mean that the people don't have the emotional depth. And I have many friends that I made here in the US that I've had these deep conversations with the same way that I have them with German friends. I think what's a little bit different here is just how quickly you get to those deeper things, and sometimes how seriously people take it too, because in Germany it's also, once you get to that deep level, people feel so responsible for each other too. It's kind of this collective society thing where German friends in a lot of ways, like they feel responsible for their friends. So if they haven't heard from someone in a long time, they're gonna be like a parent and they're gonna follow up with you and they're gonna want to hear a report on how your life is going. Whereas in the US, I feel like friendships are a little bit more independent. Like, you'll hear from each other when you hear from each other, but there's no like pressure, there's no expectations in a lot of friendships, I feel like. And I also know from a lot of Americans, once they move to different cities, they kind of lose touch. But then once they're in the same city again, they bond. But they don't feel the obligation to follow up with each other while living abroad. Whereas German friendships, like I think that's why I still have a lot of deep German friendships, is because these people, it's their duty, or they feel like it's their duty to regularly get in touch with me and follow up with me and stay involved in what is happening in my life. So there's two kind of different types of friendships, and I really love both. I started appreciating that German style of friendship after living here for a while. That's when I was like, oh, that's actually awesome that, I know that these people are always going to be there.
That's very interesting.
But yeah, that doesn't have so much to do with Cincinnati.
No, that's great. I mean, people are people, but there are cultural differences, obviously. And so I think it's a really fascinating observation. How long do you think it took for you living here to kind of really feel those differences? I mean, I'm sure you felt some immediately, but the observation you just made of like, oh, whoa, I actually can go deep and relationally with people here. That was a stereotype maybe I had from Germany that I didn't have that I got here. How long did it take living here before you really felt like you had a good grasp on what life was like here and the people here?
I feel like the first idea of that was probably after the first 1 or 2 months, pretty quickly, because I lived with Americans. I think that made a big difference. I chose not to stay in that exchange student bubble, which a lot of people who study abroad do. And most of my other exchange student friends, they were all living with each other in like exchange student housing, basically. I actively chose to live with other American roommates. So it was me and 4 Americans. And I think that made a big difference because I was able to ask them all the questions that I had. I was very blunt about that too. Like every time that I didn't understand something, I would just ask my roommates. Yeah. And they were happy to explain it too. And so I think that's kind of how I cracked a lot of these things pretty quickly, like cracked the code, I guess. But then I'm sure over the next couple of years even, I got a deeper understanding of a lot of these things. Like I think I got an initial understanding relatively quickly of the cultural differences. I feel like it's almost like a language, like that is on a sub-level that you have to understand. And then I got a deeper understanding over the next 2 years. I mean, I think I still learn stuff now. Like every time that you do a new thing, like have a new type of experience in this foreign country, like purchasing real estate, for example, is one of those things. Or once I became a homeowner, suddenly I had to deal with contractors, and like there was a whole new set of vocabulary that I thought I was fluent, but then I realized, no, I'm not fluent. I don't know any of these words that they just threw at me. And so every, I think, phase of life, you're learning new things about the culture.
Well, it's, I think that's really fascinating that you just kind of dove in. I can imagine, and that was actually faster than you said 1 to 2 months. Like, wow, that's actually really fast. But because of that experience, whereas if someone is moving into a single family home and they're more isolated and they're not having a lot of different community interaction, I could see that being a much longer process to try to.
And I was in university too, so I was like
Yes.
had that connection too, right? I feel like if you move here as an adult by yourself, let's say you even have maybe a remote job and you don't even get to see your coworkers on a daily basis, that can be very tricky.
So let's talk about that. What's maybe some of your top advice to someone who's moving here from out of the country?
In terms of cultural things or like Cincinnati as a
In
city?
general, you go where you want to go with it.
I feel like, trying to get involved. I think you have to be very proactive, especially if you're in a situation where it doesn't come naturally, like through university. If you have kids, I think that can be a great way to get involved with other parents. But if you're a single person or an adult couple that doesn't have kids yet, you just have to be proactive about making those deeper connections, I think. And one advice that I got when I first went on my exchange semester that I got from another German friend that also studied abroad in the US, she told me, say yes to everything in the first few weeks. Every time that you get asked to join someone for a party or come to a football game or something, just say yes. Even if you're exhausted and tired and overwhelmed with all the new information, just do it. And I did that. And I think that is really what opened up a lot of doors and how I met a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was like, I probably wouldn't have said yes to that otherwise, but I was in that mindset of like, well, what do I have to lose right now? I'm kind of building a new life from scratch here right now, basically. So I did say yes to everything and I met the most amazing people.
That's great. That's great advice. I love that. Okay, switching gears a little bit. Cincinnati has what we think quite a bit of a German heritage here. But I'm curious, for you, who's actually from Germany, is there anything from here that reminds you of Germany, or does it feel totally different to you?
It feels totally different. I mean, the thing with Cincinnati is it has a lot of German history, and you can see those traces everywhere in the city, and especially if you know what you're looking for, which I did a lot of research on that during my master's and also during that internship that I did. But if you don't really know what you're looking for, I feel like at first sight it just feels, as I said, like a stereotypical American city. So to me, like going through the streets, going grocery shopping, it doesn't feel like a modern German city. But it also all the German history that is here is from like the mid-19th century.
Right.
So it makes sense that it wouldn't feel modern. Now, of course, if you go to specific neighborhoods like over the Rhine, you can see a little bit of that. It's more like tenement buildings, so like apartment buildings from that time. It's not so much your single family homes with the front yards and backyards and everything. So I think that feels a little bit more European in general. I don't know if it even feels specifically German, but just more like European. And then if you see the German inscriptions on some of the buildings that are left, and there's like, whole German buildings, like churches that are still there, like Old St. Mary's Church, it still says Alte St. Marienskirche, and they still have a German-speaking mass every Sunday. So if you know where to look, then you see those traces, and of course there's all these big German events like Oktoberfest, Christkindl markets, Bachfest, Maifest. We just went to one this past weekend, Schützenfest. So like that is always definitely fun to have, and it is kind of a piece of home. So it's a wild mix. Does it feel like a German city? No, I don't think it feels like home in any way, but it feels like the US with a lot of like fun little Easter eggs that are connections to home.
That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, I love that. What's one thing that you wish Americans, you do this a lot on your channel, so I'm curious about this, but what's one thing you wish Americans maybe knew and understood better about Germans, and the other way around?
Probably going back to that mentality, the directness of Germans. I think in a lot of situations where a German and an American meet, sometimes this happens in job situations, if a company is international and the German department has to communicate with the American department. I think a lot of times Americans think that the Germans can be kind of rude. Because we don't do a lot of the polite small talk. We usually get to the point. We can be very critical with each other too. And when we give feedback, we don't really learn in our culture to do the sandwich method of positive feedback, then put the critical feedback in the middle, and then end up with positive feedback. We just straight up say,
That's what my wife tells me to tell my kids all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, sandwich. Okay.
Yeah, but I feel like a lot of Americans kind of
Maybe I've got more German in me than I realize.
Who knows? I feel like a lot of Americans do that automatically. And like I've never gotten so much positive feedback in my life until I moved here, because people just don't, a lot of Germans don't voice positive feedback. They just think that's implied anyways. We only tell you the negative stuff.
Right.
And so I think that's something about Germans that it can come off as rude from an American perspective, but Germans, for the most part, if they give you critical feedback, they mean well. Like they wouldn't even tell you if they didn't care about you. So if they do that, they mean well, they mean to help you, they mean to be helpful. So I think that is one thing. And then also that the friendliness is just, it comes in different ways for Germans. It doesn't come in the small talk, it comes in the deep conversations where they actually care about you. And then vice versa, I think things that Germans need to learn about Americans is the superficial part is, it's just part of that cultural language. And from a German point of view, it can seem, oh, they're just shallow, superficial Americans. But even if that small talk isn't 100% real, even if that, oh my God, yeah, we should meet up for a barbecue, and both parties know that that's not gonna happen, that doesn't mean there is no value to that exchange.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? I think there's just that part to that some Germans probably would need to learn if they ever came to the US.
That's great. I love that you've had that experience and can see both sides of that.
Yeah. I also am both right now. I'm like a wild hybrid of both of those things. Sometimes I come off too rude to Americans in certain situations. Sometimes I come off too soft to Germans now.
Well, it's okay. Us Americans, we probably need to get toughened up a little bit. We've had all this training of our self-esteem. So like maybe more German influence is a good thing. Okay, so wrapping it all up, thinking about your experience here and living here, any other final thoughts that you would, if someone's thinking of moving to the Cincinnati area internationally from Germany or maybe somewhere else that you'd want to share?
I feel like, well, I haven't really touched on anything negative yet. So
yeah,
see,
please.
That was very American of me.
Yes, we'll put that in the chapters below. People are definitely going to want to watch that.
I feel like the part, especially for internationals, of course it depends on where you're moving from, but for a German or fellow European moving here, I think the biggest shock for me was really the crime. And that is something that I just didn't really think I was going to be in touch with a whole lot. You know about American crime and gun violence and things like that, but I just thought, well, the media exaggerates anyways, and that doesn't mean it's going to be part of my life in any way. I mean, I'm not going to get involved with anyone that's involved in that. But then pretty quickly, like I think within the first few weeks on campus, there were like 2 active shooter situations where we had to take shelter and stuff like that. And this guy that I was dating the first few weeks that I was here, his roommate was a pizza delivery driver. He was robbed at gunpoint in his car. Like, it was wild stuff, but this was like in the university area, which some parts of that are kind of sketchy, but then other parts, it's not like the most sketchy part of Cincinnati though. So yeah, that's definitely something that I had to get used to because that's not how it is in Germany. In Germany, I literally take my bike through the woods. I mean, in Munich specifically, after I come home from a bar, and I ride my bike through the woods at 3 a.m. and I have never felt unsafe. And then here, after a while, people would always tell me these things. Like people would say, oh, don't walk there. You're not supposed to go out after dark by yourself, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, you're being ridiculous. I live it's down the road. I'll be fine. Walking home from a bar, for example, or even walking home from campus one time, I had someone tell me that. And over the years, I've kind of learned, maybe they're right. Maybe they're not just paranoid. That's what I thought at first. I was like, I'm a grown woman. It's fine. I'll be fine. And now I don't really go outside after dark by myself anymore, which, I used to love going on walks at night. I don't know, that was like a thing that I did in Munich. I'm like such a night owl. I would never do that.
That's just not a concern there? There's no crime in Munich?
I mean, it's not like there's no crime, but it's like on a whole different level. I think the crime, well, it depends on, of course, like the city, but I think for the US as a whole, usually you take like the homicide rate as a point of reference for what the crime rate is at. I think it's like 5 times per capita in the US compared to Germany. So yeah, I mean, the things that I've experienced and heard about in my direct environment over the last 8 years, I've never experienced anything like that living in Munich for 22 years, or even heard like that this happened to a friend or that this happened to a friend's neighbor, or you know what I mean? Like, just, the experiences were definitely a lot more than I expected at first. But
so be aware of crime.
Exactly, be aware. I think it's just one of those things, like we have a home security system like most Americans do, I feel like, or a lot of Americans do, like simply say for ADT or whatever. I never knew a German that ever had anything like that. So you just adjust to it and you just adjust to being a little bit more careful in that regard. But it never like outweighed the positive parts of what I loved about living here. So otherwise I probably wouldn't have stayed.
Okay, so there is crime. That's something you got to be aware of for sure. But you did decide to stay here.
Absolutely.
You bought a home here. You're
Yep.
buying an investment property right
Yeah,
now, which is
yeah.
very cool. Not through me, sadly, but that's okay.
Well, we didn't know each other then.
Yeah, that's right. We just got to know each other. But you're deciding to stay here. So tell us,
Yeah.
why are you buying a home here? Like,
Yeah.
why are you staying?
I mean, well, buying a home, I love the personal space that I said at the beginning. It's just so affordable to buy a home here. And there are so many homes that you can just have all this personal space to yourself. I would never have been able to afford a single family home in Munich at this age. I mean, we bought the house when I was 27. No, in Munich, maybe if you're very lucky, but that's not the norm. And I love that about here is just that things are, in terms of living, it's affordable. Not so much the like grocery prices, but like housing and stuff like that is affordable. And I just love Cincinnati as the city that it is, that it has, all the fun parts. I think it's also great for really any age that you're in, whether you're coming here like me as a student who wants to party, I think it's great for that. Whether you're coming here as a family, I know that a lot of people who move away from Cincinnati for college or their career, a lot of them end up returning when they have kids. Yeah, because it's actually, there's a lot of, suburbs, but even within the city that are great for kids. So I think it's a great city, and a lot of people always ask me, why would you choose Cincinnati, or why wouldn't you have chosen to move somewhere else over the years?
New York, LA, Chicago, any other US city?
I never really wanted to. I mean, I thought about it. I was like, maybe the only place that I would have wanted to really live in would have been somewhere in California, like San Diego. But that's so much more expensive.
Very expensive.
And of course, I already had all my base here, all my people, and I liked it here. I didn't stay here because anyone forced me. I really enjoy myself here.
Nobody forced you. I think that actually is a common experience, though, that when people visit here, that it's not on their radar because it's middle of the country. They lump it into all the other Midwest cities, and they think it's kind of boring. And then they get here and they're like, oh, you have the arts, and you have these museums, and you have the parks, and you have some beautiful scenery, and you have the sports teams, and people are friendly, and it's really affordable. And like, do I really want to go somewhere else? And it's like it kind of sneaks up on people, I think, who aren't from here, and it's a little bit surprising.
Yeah, it doesn't have a good reputation for some reason. A lot of people from other parts of the U.S., they just think it's this dump. Yeah. And you have to, I think, maybe know a little bit about what you're doing. If you just come here as a tourist and all you do is just drive over the interstate, then maybe it looks like a dump. But if you know where you're going, of course, if you go explore these parks and all these things, then I think you'll pretty quickly discover that it's a very livable city.
Love that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think that perspective is going to help a lot of people out there, honestly. No, I think it is, because it's hard to move to a new place, let alone a new country. And so I think it's great. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And if you guys want to learn more about the differences between American life and German life, go to Feli's channel. It's incredible. Subscribe. Watch. She's got some really entertaining and just informational videos out there, so go check it out. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.